You set this article in about the individual and the absolute from the spiritual seek. And wow, lots to unpack here.
Yeah, there's a lot in this piece, for sure. It's a fascinating perspective on human nature.
Right. And, the challenges of self-transcendence.
So to kick things off, it dives right into this idea that our individual experience is limited and prone to error, which is like a pretty bold claim right off the bat.
Well, it's saying that our individuality itself, our constant reaction to the external world, driven by instinct and desire,
Yeah.
that this distracts us from a deeper understanding of reality.
Okay, so just by being an individual, like we're already starting at a disadvantage.
That's what the article is
Or
suggesting.
what kind of error is it even talking about?
The piece points to our tendency to focus outwards, like on emails, news, cravings.
Right, the everyday stuff.
Instead of cultivating an inner awareness.
Okay.
It's suggesting these reactions, while necessary for survival, can lead to a very limited view of existence. Think about how much of our day is spent just reacting to things.
Right.
Instead of choosing how we respond.
Constantly being pulled in different directions.
By external forces.
Yeah, it goes even further,
Okay.
suggesting our choices and desires are often driven by deeper instinctual forces operating at a level beyond our immediate awareness.
Okay, so the article goes deep on two major instincts.
Okay.
Self-preservation and self-reproduction. It even renames them, the will to live and the will to reproduce.
Renaming them emphasizes that these are more than just basic drives,
Right.
They're powerful forces working through us, often subconsciously.
I mean, it's a bold statement to suggest that even things like sexual attraction
Yeah.
are less about personal pleasure and more about serving the species.
The article is challenging us to see these instincts
Yeah.
not as personal choices,
Okay.
but as expressions of a larger overarching will that transcends the individual.
There's a quote that really stood out to me. The will of the race, or the species, supersedes all individual wills and subjects these latter to its own purposive rule.
Powerful stuff.
It makes you wonder, are we just slaves to our instincts?
That's a big question.
Does the article offer any hope of escaping these limitations?
It does suggest a path, but it's not a simple one.
Okay.
It involves a shift in our understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
And that's where this idea of the supernatural urge comes in.
Okay.
This is desire for knowledge.
Right.
It seems like the article sets this desire apart from our other drives.
It argues that the pursuit of knowledge, particularly spiritual knowledge, holds the key to transcending our limited, instinct-driven state.
So how does that work?
Well, it's about understanding the nature of our consciousness and its connection to a greater reality.
Okay.
We can gradually shift our focus away from those external desires that keep us trapped in a cycle of reaction.
So instead of always reacting, knowledge helps us create space for conscious choices.
That's the idea. It's about cultivating a deeper understanding of ourselves and the forces at play within us.
So we need to understand the rules of the game before we can really play it well.
Right.
But how do we actually start down this path?
Well, the article outlines a 3-step process: study, reflection, and meditation.
Okay.
It emphasizes that knowledge must precede practice. We need to understand the principles before we can apply them effectively.
That makes sense.
Like you wouldn't try to build a house without understanding the blueprints.
Exactly.
But the article also mentions renunciation as part of this process.
Okay, what does that involve?
This is where things get challenging.
All right.
The article clarifies that true renunciation isn't about giving up our possessions or material comforts.
Got it.
It's about releasing our attachment to the idea that those things bring lasting happiness.
So it's about changing our relationship to the things we desire.
Right.
Not necessarily giving up the things themselves.
Exactly. And the article uses this really evocative phrase.
Okay.
The relinquishment of the thingness in things. The objectness in objects.
Okay.
The externality in experience.
Yeah.
The projectedness in consciousness.
That's a lot to process.
It is.
It seems to be saying that we project our own desires and expectations onto the world around us, and that this projection creates the illusion of separation between ourselves and this concept of the absolute.
You've hit on a key insight there.
Okay.
The article suggests that true renunciation involves recognizing and dissolving this illusion, allowing us to experience the underlying unity of all things.
So that sounds like a massive shift in perspective.
It is.
But how do we move from an intellectual understanding of this concept to actually experiencing it in our lives?
That's where the practice of meditation comes in. The article describes meditation as a way to withdraw our attention from the external world and focus it inward on the experience of pure consciousness.
So we're training our minds to let go of those external attachments and distractions.
Yes. And the article emphasizes that this is a continuous practice, a gradual refinement of our understanding and experience.
It's like we're slowly peeling away layers of conditioning and illusion to reveal the true nature of reality.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
So it's not about escaping the world, but about transforming our relationship to it.
Exactly. And that transformation, according to the article, involves a shift from acting out of individual desire to acting in alignment with the will of the absolute.
But if we've renounced our individual desires, like what even motivates us to act at all?
That's a great question, and it brings us to the heart of what the article is trying to convey.
Okay.
It suggests that when we truly align ourselves with the absolute, our actions become an expression of that unity.
Rather than an expression of individual desire.
So it's about moving from a state of doing to a state of being.
That's a good way to think about it.
Okay.
The article suggests that this state of being is characterized by a sense of peace, joy, and effortless action.
It sounds almost paradoxical, like renouncing our desires to experience true fulfillment.
It does sound paradoxical, but the article argues that only by letting go of our limited sense of self can we fully experience the boundless joy and fulfillment of unity with the absolute.
So like we're expanding our sense of self to encompass the whole of reality.
That's a powerful insight.
Okay.
And the article suggests that this expansion of consciousness is the ultimate goal of the entire process of study, reflection, and meditation.
This is all incredibly thought-provoking, but I'm still trying to grasp what this state of union with the absolute actually looks like. Does the article offer any specific examples or descriptions of this experience? It does. It provides some very vivid descriptions of the transformation that takes place.
Okay, let's delve into those descriptions and see if we can shed some light on this profound state of being.
Sounds good. Well, the article describes this merging with the absolute as like a moment of profound transformation.
Okay.
It says, attachments cease, the mind becomes calm, the senses are abstracted from forms, passions subside, consciousness gets concentrated, joy ensues, and an immense strength is felt within.
That's a pretty powerful description.
Yeah.
It seems to encompass both internal and external shifts that accompany this this realization.
Right.
The calming of the mind and senses, the subsiding of passions.
Yeah.
It all points to like a release from the constant pull of the external world.
It does, and it highlights a crucial aspect of self-transcendence.
Okay.
It's not about forcefully suppressing desires,
right,
but about moving beyond them entirely.
And then there's this influx of joy and immense strength that emerges. It's like almost a complete reversal of the struggle we usually associate with self-control.
Exactly. The article suggests that true self-control isn't about fighting our desires, but about transcending them.
Okay.
When that happens, a natural sense of joy and strength arises from within.
It's like we're tapping into a deeper source of energy and fulfillment that was always present, but hidden by our preoccupation with the external world.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
The article uses the phrase, an attunement of the individual to reality, to describe this alignment with the absolute.
Okay.
It signifies a merging of our individual will with the universal will.
Yeah.
A dissolution of the boundaries that separate us from the source of all being.
And this leads to like a radical shift in perspective.
It does.
As the article says, by this act, the individual draws sustenance from and becomes the universal center.
That's a key point.
Yeah.
It's not just that we experience a sense of connection with the absolute, but that we actually become the universal center.
Okay.
Drawing sustenance and strength from that connection, it represents a complete transformation of our identity and our relationship to the world.
So it's not about losing ourselves in some vast impersonal void.
Right.
But about realizing our true nature as an expression of the absolute itself.
That's a crucial distinction.
Okay.
The article emphasizes that merging with the absolute doesn't lead to annihilation of the individual,
right,
but to a profound expansion of consciousness.
Okay.
We don't cease to exist, but rather we realize our true existence as part of something much greater than ourselves.
This realization seems to have practical implications for, like, how we live our lives.
Absolutely.
It's not just a theoretical concept or a mystical experience to be had in isolation.
The article stresses that this understanding should permeate every aspect of our lives.
Okay.
It states that every act of one's life should become an expression of conscious contemplation on the absolute.
So it's about bringing this awareness into our everyday actions.
All right.
Not just reserving it for special moments of meditation or contemplation.
And this is where the idea of lifeless actions comes in.
Right.
The article suggests that any action performed without this awareness of our connection to the absolute is ultimately devoid of true meaning.
It's like going through the motions without truly being present.
Right.
Without connecting to the deeper significance of what we're doing.
Precisely. The article contrasts this with actions performed with the consciousness of our unity with the absolute, describing them as universal processes rather than individual efforts directed towards a phenomenal end.
So it's about shifting our motivation from personal gain to selfless service.
Yes.
From acting out of ego to acting in alignment with the universal will.
That's a good way to summarize it.
Okay.
The article uses the term sage to describe someone who embodies this way of being. Someone who acts with the constant awareness of their connection to the absolute.
It also suggests that this state of being has a transformative effect.
Yeah.
Not just on the individual, but on the world around them.
Right.
Saying that the very presence of this hallowed being exerts a magnetic spiritual influence on the entire environment.
It's a beautiful image suggesting that this realization of unity isn't just a personal achievement, but something that radiates outward, influencing and uplifting everyone and everything around us.
So it's not just about individual enlightenment, but about contributing to the enlightenment of the whole world.
That's a profound insight.
And the article ends with this powerful statement from the Upanishad. This universe is his, and indeed, he is the universe.
That encapsulates the whole idea beautifully.
It really does.
It's about recognizing that we're not separate from the universe, but an integral part of it. And that our actions, thoughts, and even our very being have the potential to transform the world around us.
This article has given us a lot to think about.
It has.
It challenges us to re-examine our assumptions about the nature of reality, the purpose of life, and the potential of human consciousness.
It definitely has.
It's a call to move beyond the limitations of our individual ego. And embrace a more expansive view of ourselves and our place in the universe.
Absolutely.
And as the article reminds us, this is the glorious consummation of life.
We encourage you to continue reflecting on these ideas and see how they might inform your own journey of self-discovery.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the nature of the individual and the absolute.
Until next time. You know, it's interesting how the article acknowledges that the desire for knowledge itself, it starts as an urge.
Yeah, it calls it supernatural urge. But it still seems like an urge in the beginning. Like, why is that?
Well, the article explains that as long as knowledge is pursued for a specific purpose or goal, it still operates within, you know, like a dualistic framework. There's the knower and the thing to be known.
Right, that separation.
It's only when knowledge becomes an end in itself, a direct experience of the absolute. That it transcends the realm of individual urges.
So it's about moving from knowledge as a tool to knowledge as a state of being.
That's a good way to put it. And this ties back to the idea of transcending our limited individual perspective. As long as we're seeking knowledge for personal gain or to solve specific problems, we're still operating within the boundaries of the individual self.
But even basic knowledge requires effort, right?
Of course.
We have to study, research, experiment. It doesn't just appear out of thin air.
That's true. The article recognizes that acquiring knowledge, especially in the early stages, does involve effort and the expenditure of energy, but it's the direction of that effort that matters.
So how do we direct it properly?
Well, are we seeking knowledge to bolster our ego, to gain power or control? Or are we seeking it for its own sake as a means of moving closer to the absolute?
So it's not just about what we learn, but about why we learn it.
Exactly.
Our motivation plays a crucial role.
It does, and that brings us back to the importance of understanding the nature of our urges and instincts.
Okay.
The article suggests that all these urges, including the desire for knowledge, are ultimately expressions of consciousness seeking something outside itself.
But if everything is ultimately an expression of consciousness,
right,
how do we differentiate between like lower urges and this higher urge for knowledge?
Well, the article differentiates them by their ultimate aim.
Okay.
Lower urges seek satisfaction in the external world, while the higher urge for knowledge, when properly directed, aims at the realization of the absolute.
So, like, the difference between seeking pleasure versus seeking truth.
That's a good analogy.
Okay.
And the article argues that while both involve the expenditure of energy, only the latter leads to true fulfillment and liberation from the limitations of the individual self.
Okay, so we have this powerful urge for knowledge that can actually help us overcome those other more limiting urges.
Right.
But it's not like a guaranteed thing. We have to consciously cultivate this desire. And direct it toward the right goal.
Exactly. And that's where the article's emphasis on study, reflection, and meditation comes in.
Okay.
These practices are presented as tools for transforming our understanding and gradually shifting our focus from the external to the internal, from the individual to the absolute.
The article specifically says, study, reflection, and meditation are the processes of the method of self-transcendence.
It does.
So it seems to really emphasize the importance of understanding before acting.
It does. It goes against this common notion that spiritual practice is primarily about doing.
Yeah, like rituals and techniques.
Yeah, the article suggests that true spiritual practice begins with a deep understanding of the principles involved.
So aligning our actions with our understanding.
Right.
But it also talks about the need for renunciation as part of this process. What does that actually involve?
Well, this is where things get really challenging.
Okay.
The article clarifies that true renunciation isn't about giving up possessions or material comforts.
Got it.
It's about relinquishing our attachment to the idea that those things are the source of our happiness.
So changing our relationship to the things we desire, not the things themselves.
Precisely. The article uses this really powerful phrase, the relinquishment of the thingness in things, the objectness in objects, the objectness in objects, the externality in experience, the projectedness in consciousness.
There's a lot to unpack.
It
seems to be saying that, like, we project our own desires and expectations onto the world around us. And that this projection creates the illusion of separation between ourselves and the absolute.
That's a great insight.
Okay.
The article suggests that true renunciation involves recognizing and dissolving this illusion, allowing us to experience the underlying unity of all things.
But how do we actually do that?
Well, that's where the practice of meditation comes in. The article describes meditation as a means of withdrawing our attention from the external world and focusing it on the internal, on the experience of pure consciousness.
So we're training our minds to let go of those external attachments and distractions that keep us so, focused outwards.
And the article goes on to say that this process isn't a one-time event, but a continuous practice, a gradual refinement of our understanding and our experience.
It's like we're slowly peeling away layers of conditioning and illusion to reveal the true nature of reality.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
So it's not just about escaping the world, and about transforming our relationship to it.
Exactly. And that transformation, according to the article, involves a shift from acting out of individual desire to acting in alignment with the will of the absolute.
But if we've renounced our individual desires, like, what motivates us to act at all?
That's a great question, and it brings us to the heart of what the article is trying to convey. It suggests that when we truly align ourselves with the absolute, our actions become an expression of that unity rather than an expression of individual desire.
So it's about moving from a state of doing to a state of being.
That's one way to think about it.
Okay.
And the article suggests this state of being is characterized by a sense of peace, joy, and effortless action.
It sounds almost paradoxical.
Yeah.
Renouncing our desires in order to experience true fulfillment.
It does. But the article argues that it's only by letting go of our limited sense of self that we can fully experience the boundless joy and fulfillment of unity with the absolute.
It's like we're expanding our sense of self to encompass the whole of reality.
That's a powerful insight.
This is all incredibly thought-provoking.
It is.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the nature of the individual and the absolute.
It was my pleasure.
It's been a fascinating exploration of a complex topic.
Absolutely.
And as always, we encourage you to continue reflecting on these ideas
and
see where they lead you on your own journey.
Until next time.